This is what the UEFA Champions League is all about. Real Madrid are in town, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm buzzing for the big game. On today's podcast, we're going to discuss the fixture. We'll react to Mikel Arteta and Bukayo Saka's press conferences. We'll pick a starting 11 for the big game and more. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to another episode of the pod. Sorry it's not a live edition today. I am still at the Arsenal training ground. We've been here for most of the day. We had Mikel Arteta's press conference followed by Bukayo Saka's. We've seen the first 15 minutes of the training session as well, and we've managed to gauge what the mood is like here at the Sober Realty Training Centre ahead of the big game tomorrow. And it feels like everybody is well up for it. I arrived here this morning and I can't tell you how many members of the press there were. I've been to a few of these here now, and I don't think I've ever seen this many people, not even close to it. So that goes to show the magnitude of the game. There's people arriving from all over Europe to cover it. Of course, there's a big Spanish contingent in terms of some of the media, but there was Dutch media, there was media from all over Europe here ahead of what is a massive, massive game for Mikel Arteta's side tomorrow night. What does the occasion mean? It means everything. It's huge for Arsenal. You know, it's been a long, long time since we've been dining at European football's top table. We managed to get to this stage last season and we took on Bayern Munich, but unfortunately we just fell short. It felt at times that we'd gifted them opportunities. We obviously gifted them a couple of goals in the first leg, and it felt like we kind of went into our shell in the second leg. It weren't really the Arsenal we'd been accustomed to seeing over the course of last season, and it was a bitter pill to swallow, but a learning curve, I would say. I think when you go up against Real Madrid, one of the most important things is not to kind of get sucked into the occasion. And I know that's one of the oldest cliches in the book, right? Play the opposition, don't play the occasion. I think with Real Madrid, it's even more than that, because it's not just about making sure you don't get eaten up by the occasion. It's about making sure that you don't fall foul to Real Madrid and their aura, particularly in this competition. They've been the dominant force in European football for such a long time. Carlo Ancelotti at the helm, you know, he's won this competition multiple times. There are players in that group that have won it multiple times. So not only are you contending with the fact that it's a Champions League quarterfinal, but you're also contending with the fact that this is Real Madrid, a side who have constantly performed and have constantly, really kind of kicked on as the tournament's gone on over the years. Have they had a bit of luck along the way? Absolutely. For us, there's none of that. We've had no luck this season whatsoever, I think it's fair to say. So you could be forgiven for feeling a little bit pessimistic about the chances of us getting the rub of the green tomorrow. But you know, it's really, really important that Arsenal handle the nerves. You know, we know what a great side they are. We know so much about some of the individuals, the household names. We know about the Kylian Mbappes, the Vinicius Juniors, the Jude Bellinghams, etc., etc. And it's easy, I think, to go into a game like this and sort of be afraid to play your normal game, because you know that if you give the ball away, for instance, trying to play out from the back, trying to play a pass, for argument's sake, from centre back through the lines, you know that if you give it away, they have got the players capable of punishing you. So bravery is going to be a big part of how Arsenal need to approach this game if they're going to get anything out of it. I'm going to share with you my prediction a little bit later on, and we'll talk about the game and how it might pan out tactically a little bit more later on. But, you know, for me, it is first and foremost about not throwing it away in this first leg. I know a lot of Arsenal fans out there really do strongly believe that if we don't win at the Emirates Stadium, we have no chance of getting through to the next stage. I'm not so sure that I'm of that school of thought. I really do believe that the most important thing is to stay in the game. And I would be quietly satisfied with a 0-0 draw tomorrow night at Emirates Stadium. Maybe that's the pragmatist in me. I've been accused of being a little bit boring in my thoughts over the years. So, yeah, that's just the way I see it. I think it's imperative that we don't give them anything cheaply. Make them work for it. They've got good enough players to be able to cause us plenty of problems as it is. We don't need to be gifting them things. We don't need to play into their hands. And that's why I say that a draw, and a 0-0 draw in particular, or a low scoring draw, is probably a pretty good result, because I don't really trust in our ability right now to go out and score tons of goals. But equally, I know that if we go searching for those goals and we push up the pitch, that is in a lot of ways playing into Real Madrid's hands. They've got so much pace, so much power, so much ability in behind. They've got people who sit deep in their team, particularly if Luka Modric plays from midfield, that can play passes in behind your defence. And with the problems that we have at the back, not being with our first choice centre-back pairing, they're going to feel that they can expose us. I feel like they're going to try and target Miles Lewis-Skelly as well, a young player who's still learning his trade, who has at times in recent weeks, I think, gotten a little bit carried away in certain situations and in certain moments. And they're going to look to try and hit us in behind him, I think. We know that he loves to invert. We know that he loves to go into midfield. He's going to have to be, if indeed he starts, very, very disciplined. I think it's quite difficult to prepare against a team that relies really heavily on the kind of attacking spontaneity of their most talented players. And they're some of the best players in the world. You can sit and you can look at systems and you can look at styles. Real Madrid are not a system team. They're not a team that have I don't think, really clear way of building up. I don't think they're like Pep Guardiola's Barcelona were, for instance. Obviously, they had the individual brilliance too, but you knew what the patterns of play were generally going to look like. You know what Manchester City's patterns of play are generally going to look like. You can even argue that's the case with Liverpool. With Real Madrid, they are literally a team that I just think molds and adapts to whatever it is that they're facing and relies on that individual brilliance. So how do you prepare against a team like that? I think you have to prepare for the individuals rather than the collective. And that's a very, very difficult thing to do. It's a very, very difficult thing to be across, right? The idea of preparing for what you're going to face from 11 different players, or if you narrow it down to just the attackers, 4 or 5, it can be a lot tougher than trying to prepare against the system. So that's where Real Madrid worry me. The Real Madrid, in a lot of ways, represent what I think has maybe just sort of started to disappear in the modern game, which is that individual brilliance, that spontaneity in the way you play, that spontaneity in the way that you do things. So yeah, let's see how it goes. I think it's going to be a fascinating game, and Mikel Arteta was keen in his press conference to make the point about the need for noise. We really, really do need the noise to be there. We need the Arsenal fans to be behind the team. We need everybody singing from the same hymn sheet. It's really, really important that we generate that electric atmosphere, because that does give the team an extra 5 or 10%. There's no doubt about that. They did lose at home to Valencia at the weekend, and they're now 4 points behind Barcelona at the top of La Liga. Some people would say that that's a bit of a blow. Some people would say that that might set them back, that might hinder them. For me, I look at it differently. Real Madrid have very, very often turned to the UEFA Champions League as their saviour in terms of rescuing what could potentially be a disappointing season. The pressure there is unprecedented. They have to win titles, and it don't look like they're going to win the La Liga title at the moment. Still a fair bit of football to be played, but I think that only gets them more up for this Champions League game. And so I don't see that as big a positive as some of the others. There was a really interesting story in The Athletic this morning about Fede Valverde, one of my favourite players in world football at the moment, and apparently pre him agreeing that move to Real Madrid in 2015, he'd spent some time on trial at Arsenal and the Gunners were ready to sign him, but Real Madrid made a late swoop and managed to get that deal over the line. Apparently him and his people were shocked by the kind of -4 temperatures that they found when they arrived in London. As always, the British weather letting us down. In terms of the press conference today, I thought Mikel Arteta, made a lot of interesting points. I thought he spoke at length about the meaning of this game. I think in an indirect way, he kind of hinted that, having not been at this stage often enough for a club of this size, we kind of have to recognize how far we've come, but also that we're there to compete. We're there to have a go at Real Madrid. We're there to try and get through, and we're there to do our utmost to progress in the tie. And, he always calls on the fans before big games. That's something that Mikel Arteta generally does, and I think he does it well. And I think the good thing about doing that is it kind of indirectly, doesn't it, sometimes just plants that seed in the minds of maybe those who need it. I know there'll be a lot of people that don't need winding up for a game like this. Real Madrid at home, you're going to be up for it anyway. Of course you are. But yeah, it just feels like it just feels like Mikel Arteta was very, very keen to get that particular message across. He gave nothing away about his team selection. As always, he said that he knew who was going to play across the back four, although he wasn't going to tell us. I would hope that he goes with the same 11 that I'm going to discuss a little bit later on, but you never know with Mikel Arteta. And there is a tiny sort of bit of doubt in my mind about, we're all looking at Kivior and saying, well, if White and Timber are fit, then surely he doesn't play. There is a tiny part of me, though, that thinks that Mikel Arteta might stick with him. And I got to be honest, that concerns me because I just don't think he's at the level that's required. Bukayo Saka also spoke to the media as well. Great to hear from him. And the big kind of takeaway from that was the fact that he's happy here at Arsenal and that he wants to win trophies wearing this badge. That's what Bukayo Saka said, a message to reassure the fans. Great question from Tom Canton from the Gooner Talk TV. Make sure you go over there and subscribe as well for the brilliant 8 a.m. shows. But it was a great question and it was a great answer. It was exactly the answer that the Arsenal faithful wanted to hear, that Bukayo Saka's head hasn't been turned, at least for now, and that he's pretty relaxed about the prospect of signing a new contract. Still 2 years to go, and I know that's a long time in football and a lot can change. But it's funny, isn't it? We've almost been conditioned as football fans that when we hear of a player going into the final 2 years of the contract, we sort of think, well, we either sell them now that they've got some value or we make them commit. With Bukayo Saka, there isn't that conundrum. He's such a good player and such an important part of this project that you keep him at all costs. And so the idea of potentially selling him because he's got 2 years to run on his contract, it's not even one that enters your thinking as an Arsenal man. And it certainly wouldn't have entered the thinking of anybody at the football club. In terms of starting 11 for the game, I think there's a couple of decisions that need to be made. Ideally, if everybody's fit, I go with the back five, including the goalkeeper of Raya in goal. I probably go Timber at right back just because I don't feel like Ben White's at 100% just yet. He was heavily strapped around his left knee when he came out for the open training session a little bit earlier on today. I don't know if that's cause for concern, or I don't know if the fact that he was out there means that it's just a precautionary measure being taken by the club's medical staff. But in an ideal world, I'd go Raya in goal. I'd go Timber at right back. I'd go White at right back. I'd go Saliba, Gabriel, and I'd go Timber at left back, because I think there is a concern, at least on my part, about Miles Lewis-Skelly in a game like this. Not because I don't think he's a fantastic player, he absolutely is, but his strength comes when he goes roaming. His strength comes in his ability to carry the ball and drive through the midfield. And I just don't think against a Real Madrid side as talented as this, you're going to get as many opportunities to do that. And therefore, his strength then becomes a potential weakness to the team. I think they'll look at that. They'll target that area. They'll want to drag whoever the left centre-back is out of position and out to that left-hand side to go and confront people and create the spaces in the middle as a consequence of that. And without Gabriel in the team, whoever does that, it's either going to be William Saliba, who's a fantastic centre-back but isn't a left centre-back, or it's going to be Kivior, who I think we can all agree at times has looked uncomfortable. Maybe it's White, maybe it's Timber, who knows? But whichever way Mikel Arteta goes, he won't have Gabriel there. And that will encourage Real Madrid, I think, to attack us down their right-hand side. They often like to attack down the left, of course, because they've got Vinicius Jr. on that side. Kylian Mbappe naturally just drifts that way, sort of Thierry Henry-like, because he's a right-footed player that likes to cut inside. But yeah, I just think to myself, that would have been my ideal back four in this scenario. White, Saliba, Gabriel and Timber are four best defenders in my opinion, and obviously we're without Calafiori, we're without Tomiyasu, so we don't have those options. Some people have suggested Kieran Tierney starts. Not for me. I don't think he's part of our best team. I think he's a useful squad player at the moment, but we all know that he's returning to Celtic in the summer. And so, yeah, I'm not sure I'd throw him into a game like this. But if needs must, he's a reliable deputy. And I actually think in a lot of ways he'd probably be more reliable than Alexander Zinchenko, for instance, if we had to make changes at left back for any reason. But yeah, just to build on the 11 stuff. So Raya in goal is what I'd go with based on the current circumstances. Timber, I would go with. I'm not sure if I go with him at right back or if I go with White at right back. I think if Saliba moves across to left centre back, then I think I'd go Timber, Saliba, White, and then Lewis-Skelly across the back line. So that's my back four: Timber, Saliba, White, Lewis-Skelly. Partey, Rice, and Odegaard would be my midfield trio, and then I'm going to go with Saka, Trossard up front, and Martinelli. Now, I know not everybody's going to agree with that. I know people will look at Mikel Merino's recent record and feel that he deserves to start. I'm not really strong on the opinion of whether or not he should start, but I think just looking at Leandro Trossard at the weekend, he seems to thrive when we play against teams that just give us that little bit more space. I think Real Madrid will do that, and I think having that sort of ability on the transition that he would give us that maybe Marino doesn't might be beneficial to us in a game like this. Obviously, Marino gives you the option to go over the top, be a little bit more direct, gives us a threat from set pieces. Maybe you look at that, you lean on what um, the sort of Premier League requires versus what La Liga requires, and you think that if we can dominate in that sense, it'll be really, really important. I think Mikel Arteta said, and it was during the Spanish section of the press conference, so I might have misinterpreted this, but I think he said that something like 30% of our goals have come from set pieces. So that's a big weapon, and Mikel Merino's a big weapon in those circumstances. So maybe he goes with Merino. Personally, though, I'd go with Trossard up front. So just to reiterate very, very quickly, my 11 would be Raya in goal. Timber, Saliba and White would be the two centre-backs. Lewis Skelly at left-back, Partey, Rice and Odegaard, Saka, Trossard and Martinelli. Some will say it's harsh on Jakub Kiwior that I've left him out because obviously he got the man of the match at Everton at the weekend, but I still don't believe off the back of that he's at the level required. Now, a couple of other bits and pieces just to mention and to be aware of going into this game. Obviously, there are 3 players in the Arsenal side that run the risk of missing the second leg should they pick up bookings in this first leg, and they're 3 really important players: Gabriel Martinelli, Declan Rice and Jurrien Timber. All 3 of those must avoid bookings, otherwise they'll miss the second leg, so that's something to look out for. Just very, very quickly as well, we were having a look at the 06 team that went to the Bernabeu and won by a 0-0. We were watching some of the game back a little bit earlier on as well. And you look at that team and you think about how kind of, patched up we were, particularly defensively. And that kind of gives you encouragement with regards to what's going on tomorrow night. We're talking about needing to patch up the defense. We could still play with centre backs as good as sort of Saliba and White or Saliba and Timber if we wanted to. So it's not as bad as it was back in 06, and we managed to get through that tie. We played Flamini at left back. We had Senderos playing, a player that divided opinion so much at Arsenal. One week he looked great, and as if maybe not great, maybe that's too strong a term, but he looked like he was developing into a pretty good centre half, and then he'd have these calamitous games. He particularly hated playing against Didier Drogba and that type of striker, if you remember correctly. So, yeah, we've done it before against Real Madrid, against the odds, and there's no reason why we can't do it again. As I say, it's all about staying in the tie. Give ourselves a chance. Get a draw, and I'll be chuffed. I really, really would. I know a lot of people feel that we need a victory to give us a chance going to the Bernabeu, but I don't see it like that. I genuinely think it's only half time at the end of tomorrow night, and we've just got to make sure that we stay in it, and then we can plan accordingly. If we need to adapt our approach for the second leg, we can do that. We've got a Premier League game coming up at the weekend that, quite frankly, I don't think anybody really cares too much about at the moment. I think we're going to finish second comfortably. And so that gives us the opportunity to rotate. That gives us the opportunity to give people a breather if they need it between the first leg and the second leg, etc., etc. In terms of my prediction, I'm going to go for the 0-0 draw then. I'm going to say there are going to be no goals in this one. I feel it's going to be a bit cagey. I think you're going to get 2 teams that kind of sit up in mid-blocks and just literally sort of feel each other out. I really do believe that's how it's going to go. And as long as we don't do anything silly, then I think Real Madrid will be quite content with that as well. And so I think you're going to see quite an underwhelming game tomorrow night, if I'm being honest. I don't think you're going to get the fireworks that the names Arsenal and Real Madrid might sort of prompt you thinking about in your mind. I think it is going to be a little bit more cagey than that. I think the 2 teams are going to try and feel each other out. And I think that's the type of game we're going to get. Look, Mikel Arteta said it as well. Don't just come to watch the game, come to play the game with us. We need to bring the noise. We need to create the atmosphere. We need people in the stadium early. I know the club are doing a few bits and pieces before the game. There's a light show. There's a display. There's going to be some tifos to try and generate the kind of electric atmosphere that I think we all agree we need if we're gonna get the upper hand over the European royalty and giants that are Real Madrid. But yeah, this is going to be one hell of a game. We've waited 20 odd years for a game like this. Yeah, we played Bayern Munich at this stage last season, and yes, they are one of European football's juggernauts, but they don't have the same pull, they don't have the same glamour, and the same aura as Real Madrid. Nobody does, and that's what makes this game really, really special. The opportunity to pit our wits against, European royalty and a club who are serial winners of this competition. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your predictions. Get involved in the comment section. Remember, leave a like if you're watching. Subscribe as well if you haven't done so already. And if you're listening on audio, reviews on Apple and Spotify are very, very much appreciated. And I'll see you all after the game against Real Madrid, where we'll either be jumping up and down and in awe of a wonderful Arsenal performance, scratching our heads as to whether we've done enough if it ends up in a draw, or bitterly disappointed off the back of a disappointing defeat. So it could go any way, and that's what makes this a fascinating encounter. We was also talking to someone who covers the European games from a Spanish perspective, who said to us that, in Spain, there isn't really that respect for Arsenal, and Mikel Arteta isn't really held in as high esteem as he is, for example, here. That's understandable because he's been in England for a really, really long time. But it does feel like, there is a chance we could go into this and we could surprise Real Madrid. I know at a professional level, they'll be doing their research, they'll be doing their homework, but it does feel like we are viewed by everybody else as the underdogs. I don't see us as being major underdogs. I think slight underdogs is as far as I would take it. Remember, leave those likes, subscribe, reviews, etc., etc. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and I'll catch you all after the game. It's going to be a big one up the Arsenal. Come on, you Gunners.